You're watching Business Plus here on News9 Live. The big piece of macroeconomic news that everybody has been awaiting is finally out, and that is the GDP growth number for India for the first quarter of the current financial year. That is the months of April to June of this financial year, and the number has come in at 7.8%. It's a one-year high, Kartik, 7.8%. Albeit the fact that it's below the Reserve Bank of India's own expectations of 8% and the street analysts' expectations of 7.9%. Yet, when you compare this to the previous quarter, which is the last quarter of the last financial year, where the growth was 6.1%, this is a significant jump over that of 7.8%.
So I think, Krishna, it's fair to assume that it's in line with expectations. Now, even street expectations ranged, when you spoke from analyst to analyst, from about 7.6, 7.7% all the way to 7.9%.
All right.
RBI, of course, was overtly bullish on the number coming in at 8%. But I think 7.8% is a good number. There's nothing to complain yet. I think the complaints will start maybe next quarter onwards, or the present quarter that we are in. Because 7.6% is the targeted growth rate for India. The mission that India has set itself on to become the third largest economy by the turn of the decade. And for us to reach that $5 trillion mark, we've got to grow at 7.6% annually.
Right.
So what is worrying in this 7.8 figure right now is that even though Q1 has beaten street expectations, and is almost in line with what RBI expected from the growth to come at, the next 3 quarters of the financial year will have to maintain a 7% or so growth rate to be able to close the year at 7.6. Right. That's going to be tough given the inflation that we have seen in this quarter, and the months of July and August both have seen inflation expectations being hit outside of the park, and there's absolutely no recovery there. Right. So I think that number will have to be contained. Q2 is almost gone. There's nothing much that the government will be able to do, because the inflation also that we've seen is on account of supply and not demand. So
and
there are no tools. Inflation. It's food inflation, right? And supply, the crop getting damaged because of unseasonal rainfall, deficit, surplus rainfall in different parts of the country.
Very little the government can do.
The government can do nothing. So RBI's any further tightening to tame inflation is actually only going to hamper growth further, because loans are going to become expensive, and we are heading into festive season. So at a time when you want to make that high ticket purchase, you want to buy a car, you want to buy the iPhone 15 is getting launched globally on the 12th of September. So any of these high value, high ticket purchases that you want to do, you need the loan to be available for that, and any further tightening is going to hamper that growth prospect.
As we discussed, there's also graphics flashing on the agriculture sector growth, and then the manufacturing sector growth, and the construction sector growth as well. Agriculture sector posting good growth, manufacturing sector not so much. But the fact of the matter is that as far as the overall GDP number itself is concerned, for the same quarter, China grew at 6.3%, and India with 7.8% continues to remain the fastest growing major economy in the world.
Absolutely. So I think China, again, the data coming from China is made in China. So there's only this much we can trust that number. But yeah, even a 6.3% growth rate for China seems obnoxious right now, given the deflation that the economy has seen. It's come out of zero COVID only in the month of December, and the economy has just not been able to pick up. And the biggest growth drivers for the Chinese economy are, number one, the real estate sector, and number two, automobiles. And we've seen both these sectors tank. We've seen what's happened with Country Garden. Of course, we've seen what's happened with Evergrande. So overall, the real estate sector has not taken off in China. That accounts for almost 25% of the Chinese GDP. Add to that another 12-13% of growth to come from the auto sector, and even the likes of Tesla and BYD are not being able to shore up any sales. So India coming in at 7.8%, I think keep China out of the equation. For India itself, the number is good. There's nothing wrong with that number, but this number will be significantly lower when data comes out for Q2. And hopefully, if the El Nino impact is over by the time we get into Q3, and the festive sales and the festive consumption would have picked up hopefully in Q3, we should maybe see a little bit of growth in Q3, and thereafter we'll see, because it is election year, the GDP number will have to keep ticking, inflation will have to be tamed in. But 7.8% overall, I think nothing to complain about yet.
And in fact, those numbers you're talking about, we can't maintain the 7.8% for the next quarter. In fact, you compare this with the same quarter in the previous financial year, the April to June quarter of the last financial year, the growth number was 13.1%. That's an overview of the way GDP figures have panned out.
But Krishna, you've got to look at the base effect there.
Yeah.
I mean, 13.2 looks excellent on this graph, but
Yeah.
then we are talking about this 13.1% growth in comparison with Q1 of 2021.
Which is COVID.
Right?
Yes.
So smack in the middle of COVID, the Delta wave just about taking off, and we remember, a taller graph than that in 2021 when it came to COVID. So it's a low base effect and not really, numerically, I think the 7.8% right now will yield far more numeric value in absolute terms than a 13% growth last year.
That's how we need to keep reading these GDP figures. Don't take them for just the numbers on your screens. There's a context to these numbers. The 13.1% was based on a low base effect during COVID, and now 7.8%. India continuing to remain the fastest growing major economy in the world. The question, as Kartik is rightly pointing out, can we maintain this momentum for the next consecutive 2, 3 or even 4 quarters of the current financial year, which will really be telling as far as India's economy is concerned. And I'm afraid we've completely run out of time on the subject. With that, Kartik, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it with News9.